There is a journey that every empath walks alone, a path that is often invisible to the outside world and rarely acknowledged by those who have never experienced it. It is not written about in most psychology textbooks, and it is rarely discussed in conventional therapy sessions, because the empath's experience is so deeply internal that it defies easy description. But if you are an empath watching this, you know exactly what I am talking about, because you have lived it every single day of your life. You feel things before they happen, sensing the shifts in energy before anyone else notices, as if you have an internal radar that picks up on what is coming. You absorb emotions from rooms the moment you enter them, taking in the mood like a sponge, soaking up water, unable to filter out what belongs to you and what belongs to others. And you have probably spent most of your life being told that you are too sensitive, too emotional, or that you need to toughen up and stop feeling so much, as if your sensitivity is a flaw that needs to be corrected. These words have likely been spoken to you by well-meaning friends, frustrated family members, or partners who could not understand why you reacted so deeply to things that barely registered with them, why you seem to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. But what if I told you that your sensitivity is not a weakness, that the very qualities that have made you feel different, even broken at times, are actually the foundation of something powerful, something that most people will never understand or possess? What if the very thing that has made you feel different, even broken, is actually a psychological superpower that most people will never understand or possess, a gift that sets you apart from the majority of humanity and gives you access to a depth of experience that others can only glimpse from a distance? The research on highly sensitive persons, pioneered by Dr. Elaine Aron, reveals that approximately 15-20% of the population has a nervous system that is fundamentally different from the rest, a nervous system that is more responsive, more perceptive, and more easily overwhelmed. You process information more deeply than others, taking in more details and reflecting on them more thoroughly, which means you see the world with a richness that others miss. You notice subtleties that others miss, the small shifts in tone, expression, and energy that reveal the truth beneath the surface, the hidden currents that others do not perceive. And when it comes to emotional information, you are essentially operating with high-definition perception in a world where most people are still using standard definition, seeing only what is obvious while you perceive the full spectrum of emotional reality. Today, we are exploring why super empaths are both the softest and most dangerous people you will ever meet, a paradox that confuses and sometimes frightens those who do not understand the depth of the empath's journey. And by the end of this video, you will understand yourself in a completely new way, recognizing the patterns that have shaped your life and the potential that lies ahead. To understand this fully, we need to examine what the research actually tells us about human behavior and relationships, because the patterns we observe are not random or unpredictable. Studies in social psychology, behavioral neuroscience, and attachment theory all point to the same fundamental truth. Human behavior is far more predictable than most people realize, and understanding these patterns gives you significant advantages in every area of life, from your personal relationships to your professional success. Research by Dr. Roy Baumeister on belongingness motivation demonstrates that humans have a fundamental need to connect with others, a drive that is as essential to our survival as food and water, a need that has been shaped by millions of years of evolution. This need is not just psychological, not just a desire for companionship or social interaction. It is biological, rooted in our evolutionary history as social animals who depended on each other for survival. Social isolation activates the same threat response systems as physical danger, meaning that being alone triggers the same stress response as being in physical peril, because our brains have learned that isolation meant death in our ancestral environment. But this need for connection exists in constant tension with our equally fundamental need for autonomy, the desire to be independent and self-directed, to make our own choices and control our own lives. Dr. Jack Bream's research on reactance theory shows that when people feel their freedom is threatened, they experience psychological reactance, a state that motivates them to restore their freedom, often by doing the opposite of what they are being pressured to do, by asserting their independence in the face of control. This explains why people often want something more when they feel it might be taken away, why the forbidden fruit is always the sweetest. It explains why telling someone they cannot have something often makes them want it more intensely, why restrictions breed desire rather than compliance. It explains why pushing someone too hard often leads to resistance rather than cooperation, because the human spirit rebels against control. On the neurological level, Research using functional MRI has revealed that social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain, that the brain does not distinguish between a broken heart and a broken bone in terms of the neural pathways that are engaged. This is not metaphorical or poetic. It is literally true. A biological reality that has profound implications for how we understand human behavior. The anterior cingulate cortex and insula, which process physical pain, also activate during social exclusion, meaning that the pain of being left out, ignored, or rejected is experienced as actual physical pain by the brain, with all the same neural signatures. This explains why emotional wounds can feel as intense as physical ones, why the loss of a relationship can cause physical symptoms like chest pain and fatigue, why heartbreak is not just a figure of speech but a real, measurable physiological experience. This explains why social threats can trigger such powerful responses that override logic and reason, because the brain is treating them as matters of survival. Dr. Matthew Lieberman's research on social neuroscience, presented in his book Social, demonstrates that our brains are wired to prioritize social information above almost everything else, that we are constantly scanning our environment for social cues, threats, and opportunities, often without conscious awareness, like a radar that never stops sweeping for signals. This means that social dynamics are not just interesting sidelines to human existence, not just peripheral concerns that we can ignore when we choose. They are one of our brain's primary concerns, a fundamental part of how we navigate the world, as essential to our functioning, as breathing or eating. What this means practically is that the patterns we observe in relationships are not random, not unpredictable, not impossible to understand. They follow predictable psychological laws that govern human behavior across cultures and contexts, laws that have been observed and documented by researchers for decades. The person who seems less interested often becomes more attractive due to the scarcity principle, because we value what is rare and hard to obtain, what we cannot easily have. The one who walks away often becomes more valued due to loss aversion, because we are wired to avoid losses more than we are wired to seek gains. And the fear of losing something is a powerful motivator. The one who maintains emotional stability while others react becomes perceived as higher status, because emotional control is associated with power and competence, with the ability to handle pressure without crumbling. Understanding these laws does not make you manipulative, does not mean you are trying to control others or exploit their weaknesses. It makes you informed, gives you the ability to see clearly what is happening rather than being confused by it, rather than being manipulated without realizing it. And in a world where emotional intelligence determines success more than raw IQ, where the ability to understand and navigate human emotions is often the difference between thriving and struggling, this information is not just useful. It is essential for navigating the complexities of human interaction. The distinction between manipulation and wisdom is intent. The difference between using knowledge to exploit others and using it to protect yourself and create genuine connections. Manipulation uses this knowledge to exploit others, to gain power at their expense, to control and dominate. Wisdom uses it to protect yourself and create genuine connections, to build relationships that are healthy, reciprocal, and nourishing. The research is clear. Why super empaths are both the softest and most dangerous people you will meet is not just an interesting psychological concept, not just an idea to ponder. It is a real phenomenon that affects your daily life, your relationships, and your well-being, shaping every aspect of your existence, from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep. Understanding it gives you something powerful: choice, the ability to decide how you will respond rather than being driven by unconscious patterns. You can respond from awareness rather than react from programming, making conscious decisions rather than being carried along by automatic reactions. You can navigate relationships with understanding rather than confusion, seeing clearly what is happening rather than being lost in the emotional fog. The question is not whether these patterns exist in your life. They do, because they are part of the empath's experience, woven into the fabric of your daily existence. The question is what you will do with this knowledge, how you will use it to transform your life. Will you use it to understand yourself better, to make sense of the experiences that have confused you for so long, to finally see the patterns that have been shaping your life? Will you use it to improve your relationships, to set boundaries that protect your well-being, to create connections that are balanced and healthy? Will you use it to protect yourself from those who would exploit your natural tendencies, to recognize the signs of emotional manipulation before you were drawn in? Will you use it to develop strengths you did not know you had, to grow into the person you are meant to be, to transform your sensitivity from a source of suffering into a source of power? The path forward starts with honest self-assessment, a willingness to look at yourself clearly, to see the patterns that have shaped your life without judgment. Where do you see yourself in what we have discussed today? What patterns resonate with your experience? What aspects of this journey feel familiar to you? What dynamics have you observed in your own relationships? The patterns that repeat themselves over and over, the themes that recur despite your best efforts. And more importantly, what is one thing you can do differently starting today? One small change that can set you on a new path, one decision that can begin to shift the trajectory of your life. The research on behavior change shows that small, specific commitments are far more effective than grand resolutions, that incremental progress is more sustainable than dramatic transformation. Do not try to transform everything at once, because that approach often leads to burnout and disappointment, to giving up when you do not see immediate results. Pick one insight from this video, one idea that resonated with you, one truth that spoke to your experience, one pattern to watch for, one behavior that you recognize in yourself and want to change. One behavior to modify, one small change that can make a difference, one action you can take today. And start there, because that is where real change begins, in the small, consistent actions that build over time. Remember? Knowledge without action is just entertainment, a pleasant diversion that does not change anything, a passive consumption of information that leaves you exactly where you started. But knowledge with consistent action is genuine transformation, a shift that reshapes your life, a change that becomes part of who you are. You now have the knowledge, the understanding of why super empaths are both the softest and most dangerous people you will meet, and the strategies to navigate that paradox. The next move is entirely yours, because no one can make this journey for you. No one can do the work that only you can do. Choose wisely, because your choices will determine your future, will shape the person you become. The super empath's journey is one of profound transformation, a process that takes the softest heart and forges it into something unbreakable. The softness comes from the depth of feeling, from the capacity to understand and connect with others on a level that most people will never experience. The super empath feels the pain of others as if it were their own. They cry with those who cry, mourn with those who mourn, and celebrate with those who celebrate. Their heart is open, vulnerable, and deeply compassionate. This softness is not weakness. It is the source of their greatest strength. But the same sensitivity that makes them so soft also makes them dangerous, because they have learned through experience that the world can be cruel, that their open heart can be exploited, that their compassion can be weaponized against them. The super empath has been broken, has been used, has been drained dry by those who saw their softness as an opportunity rather than a gift. And in the process, they have learned to protect themselves, to develop boundaries that are both fierce and unyielding. They have learned to see through manipulation, to recognize the patterns of those who would exploit them, to understand the psychology of those who seek to control. This makes them dangerous to anyone who would try to take advantage of their sensitivity, because they are no longer naive. They are no longer willing to sacrifice their peace for the comfort of others. They have learned the hard way that love without boundaries is self-destruction, that compassion without limits is a form of self-harm. And so they become both soft and hard, both open and protected, both vulnerable and fierce. This paradox is the essence of the super empath's power, and it is what makes them both the most compassionate and the most formidable people you will ever encounter. They are dangerous, not because they seek to harm others, but because they will not allow themselves to be harmed. They are dangerous because they have finally learned that protecting their peace is not selfish, that saying no is not cruel, that walking away is not abandonment. They are dangerous because they have integrated their sensitivity with their strength, and they will not be controlled by guilt, obligation, or fear. The strongest empaths are not those who have never been broken, but those who have been broken and chosen to heal. They are not those who have never been hurt, but those who have been hurt and chosen to grow. They are not those who have never been drained, but those who have been drained and chosen to protect their energy. They are the ones who have taken their sensitivity, the very thing that made them feel different and even broken, and transformed it into their greatest asset. They are the ones who have learned that their softness is not weakness but strength, that their ability to feel deeply is not a curse but a gift, and that their journey through pain has given them a wisdom that cannot be learned any other way. So if you are a super empath who has been broken, if you have felt the weight of the world on your shoulders, if you have been told you are too sensitive too many times, take heart. The very thing that has caused you pain is the thing that will set you free. The journey from softness to dangerousness is not easy, but it is worth it, because on the other side of that journey is the person you were always meant to be. The person who feels deeply, but is not controlled by those feelings. The person who cares profoundly, but does not lose themselves in that care. The person who has finally learned to protect their peace while keeping their heart open. If this resonated with you, subscribe to Human Behavior Intelligence, because this channel exists to help you understand yourself and others on a deeper level, to provide the insights you need to grow, to offer the understanding that can transform your life. Every video combines research-backed psychology with practical insights you can actually use, bridging the gap between theory and practice, between knowing and doing. The next video drops soon, and you will not want to miss it, because it will take you even deeper into the fascinating complexity of human behavior, revealing another hidden pattern that most people never notice. Until then, stay observant, stay curious, and never stop learning about the fascinating complexity of human behavior, because the more you understand, the more you can grow, the more you can be healed, the more you can become the person you were always meant to be. And remember, your sensitivity is not a weakness. It is a superpower. Your softness is not a flaw. It is your greatest strength. And your dangerousness is not cruelty. It is the fierce protection of a heart that has learned its value. Keep going, because the person you are becoming is worth it.